It's the incomparable, indisputably idiosyncratic Undress Show. And again, it's the incomparable, indisputably idiosyncratic Undress Show. How many more times? It's the Wednesday night Undress Show. Find us on porn sites across Europe and North America. So here we are again at Uncle Conroy's place, and he knows so many people. You know, he was talking to Trump's chauffeur the other day, bizarrely, who told him about a funny thing that happened out on the campaign trail. You may have heard about this. Apparently they were driving in convoy. You know how they have all these big black sedans? Driving in convoy out on the road, and suddenly a pig runs in front of the car. And the chauffeur has no time to react, and he runs over it, giving the pig instant death. Well, the chauffeur stops the parked car, gets out, looks around, and he spots a small farmhouse in the distance. And Donald says to his chauffeur, "You should at least tell them you've killed the pig." And one of the Secret Service guys says, "Well, he better do it." Well, after about 30 minutes, everyone's getting a bit jumpy. The agent hasn't returned, so another goes, and another 20 minutes, and no agent. Finally, the two agents stumble out of the farmhouse, covered in lipstick, kiss marks, and a bottle of champagne in each hand. And as they stumble back to the cars, Donald winds down the passenger window and says, "Jesus, what did you tell them?" The agent said, "Exactly what you told me to. Hi, I'm Donald Trump's Secret Service guard. We just killed the pig." What? What?
I didn't see that coming.
Let me gently introduce our panel for tonight. The Magic Dr. Orlando.
Hello.
The indefatigable Kathleen Taylor.
Hello.
And possibly the Dark Lord of Transylvanian Pheromones, Ivo Ivanov. And without further ado, the first question of the night. Yes. Do I have to Twitter? I Facebook and I text, but why should I have to Twitter, dear? Even if I knew how. And wouldn't it be extra cool just to use the mail, like we used to do back in the good old days?
Do you really want to stop there? I mean, why not just go back to telegrams?
Smoke signals.
Yeah.
Smoke signals are difficult because you've got to have a fire.
Well,
Telegrams,
Jeremy would
I
be
like.
really good at drums.
All right, so I'm going to take your question for the seriousness to which I think you asked it. You don't have to Twitter. Where are you
He
going?
doesn't?
No.
Okay.
There's no point in actually Twittering at this point.
Yeah.
Twitter is
Is it dying?
that seems to be the case.
Yeah.
If it's not dying, it's definitely not growing anymore. Right now, they are looking for a buyer. They can't find one.
They can't find any way to make money out of it, can they?
Well, no, it's not. I don't think it's necessarily the case that they can't find a way to make money. I think that it is supporting itself right now. The problem with Twitter is that it is unfettered. The thing that we actually love about the internet, because it's so unfettered, you've basically had it taken over by the trolls.
Oh, okay.
Did you say unfettered or unfeathered?
I said unfettered. I'm not sure what you mean when you say unfeathered.
It's sort of like
to do with birds, isn't it?
No, Twitter has nothing to do with birds. So, moving back into reality. The reason that Disney passed on Twitter, the reason that that we have a list of companies now that are passing on buying it, so far Disney, Salesforce, and Google have all passed on buying it exclusively because there's no way that a mainstream company could get away with making that purchase with the racist, sexist nature of the majority of the conversation that's going on in Twitter right now.
Right.
Do you know if Trump TV are looking at it?
Oh, I'm sure they would be. In fact, it would be their milieu. On a completely unrelated note, I actually had to look up the difference between milieu and oeuvre earlier this week, just so
Okay.
because
You
I
have to
hear
look up the
people.
difference between milieu
Yes,
and ouvert.
because I didn't know exactly what the difference was. I thought it was pretty interesting that milieu is
Surroundings.
surroundings and oeuvre is
Work.
the body of work. But in just
it
hearing
meant
people
open.
talk about it,
Yeah.
they kind of use them interchangeably. I
Yeah.
found that to be a little bit interesting. Anyway,
Yeah.
So you haven't told me why. So I don't have to worry about twittering.
well, see, here's the tricky part of your question. You, as a media personality, exclusively have to worry about twittering. If you are not twittering, you are missing out on some portion of an audience. It may not be your current demographic, but quite literally, in order for your show to grow outside the millions that you currently have, you have to be engaged in all of these new and
Got to go for the
varying-
billions, dear.
Exactly,
Billions.
exactly.
Should
So,
I
yes.
have a go at my producers about that?
Sure, your producers should hire a team of scantily clad teenage girls
Eric!
to be in charge
Get on
of
that.
the twittering.
Really? Does scantily clad come across when you tweet?
I'm sorry, your wife's here. You should
Yeah.
have some old guys that understand the.
How about scantily clad young men?
Well, if Jeremy swings that way, then
Eric, get back on this now.
I'm completely
Why
okay
am
with
I
that.
not twittering, Eric?
You, little do you know, you're on Twitter. I think
Am I?
you abandoned
Yes,
the
you
account.
are.
I think about 4 years ago.
Well, I expect you to
You're
look
there.
after all these things. You're my producer.
Well, I look after mine, and I agree with Lewis that I don't think they're making money. It's not growing. They're looking for ways to grow it, but I think it is the most intense media tool that we have out there right now. Particularly when debates are going, live tweeting. I mean, it is more to the moment than radio even is in live television.
Yeah, but are the trolls and
Yes.
that's taking
But
over?
you can customize that. You can get rid of trolls. You don't
Really?
have to follow trolls.
We don't.
What's wrong with trolls?
It's all who you follow. You can
Okay.
follow reputable
You
news
only
sources.
see the people that you choose to see the tweets from.
Absolutely. And sometimes you will get a little overlap when people you follow retweet other people's
Well, what about people
opinions.
who find what you tweeted and direct tweets at you? Don't you have to see those?
No, you can You can essentially filter out anything you want. You can filter out by keyword. You can filter out by person.
Would I
Okay.
be able to filter out at Hillary Clinton? Because I really only want to listen to Mr. Trump. Does he tweet?
Yes, he's
he
got
tweets-
12 million, I believe. Does
Yeah.
he have
He
more than
might
Hillary? I think he's
tweet,
got.
but he can't spell.
They both got a lot.
Yeah.
And then people will troll him and attack and her. But you can choose what you see and what you don't see. There's spam accounts galore, and sure they'll spawn, but you can block, you can mute. I've found a way to customize my news feed to where I'm getting to the moment news from reputable sources and counterculture and counter news sources that I trust or that
Right.
I am intrigued in, plus my friends. So, and then there's the whole list thing. I don't know if that still exists, where you customize it to where I've got a news feed, I've got my friends tweeting
Yes.
about their dinner tonight.
Yeah.
I'm a huge proponent of Twitter.
Okay.
And
we
that-
got
but
a
I do
4.
understand that it's because it is so free and customizable. You're going to start seeing ads in there, and I already do.
I'm glad I found out about this because obviously I may have to find myself another producer if you're not going to let me know. I mean, what is it that you've got against me tweeting?
Well, it's just the stuff that you say, dude.
What would you
Oh.
tweet about, Mr. Taylor?
Well, I
Oh
don't
God,
know.
the idea, it just boggles the mind.
What would I talk about? I would talk about things I like to eat. I'd talk about
Mostly he
Old
would tweet
tools.
about bacon
bacon, old tools,
and more bacon.
pussycats. I like talking about pussycats.
So
Bentleys.
right now you're up to 3 followers. Keep going.
Downton Abbey.
Okay, 7.
Getting there. It's more than that.
just
Downton
don't know.
Abbey is
I mean,
gone
it's-
at this point, right?
Yeah. They're over
I don't
with.
know, what would I tweet about? It's an interesting question, isn't it? What would I tweet about?
Well, for me, I
ask
am not a
everybody,
fan of the Twitter. I don't like tweeting. I do like following, the reputable news sources or like the scientists that I find that are, National Geographic, those kinds of things. I will follow. But as a method of self-promotion and self-publishing, I don't have any interest in it. Like every so often I'll find a joke that'll fit into the 140 character format that I think fits.
Yeah.
But that's really about, I mean, if you check my Twitter feed, there might be a tweet every 6 months, like on average. And
Right.
sometimes that means going 2 years without and then having 5 or 6 rapid fire, right behind it. So for me, I mean, as an individual, Twitter's not all that great a tool. As far as media, news, it's somewhat useful. But yeah, I would be surprised if there is a company that is willing to take on the liability of making a profit off the vitriol that is spewed on Twitter.
Right.
Well, let's move on to the next question, and that is one of the things I wanted to talk about was walls and fences and things.
Right.
We've seen the issue with the Berlin Wall and the horrors that went with that. But that's a little different to the wall between America and Mexico. What we're talking about is building a wall between two countries, about splitting a country in half, which is what might happen if Scotland goes for independence and gets it. Scotland's main interest is staying with Europe, not staying out of Europe. They want to stay with Europe. This has all sorts of implications. For example, fuel costs, immigration. If you're part of the European Union, you are allowed to move backwards and forwards between different states without passports and all that sort of thing. Right? So all the asylum seekers who've moved from various different countries and are currently camped out in Boulogne and Calais and places like that would simply move up the coast and they would be perfectly legitimately allowed to travel across on a ferry, arrive in Scotland, all perfectly legitimate, no one's going to stop them, and then they move south, arriving in some of Britain's big cities, Liverpool, Manchester, and London, of course, Leeds.
Probably to the immense benefit of some of England's big cities.
And they would then immediately be entitled to certain benefits. My question is, why should that be? Why is that fair? What's fair about that? What's fair about saying that someone actually has to... Britain, Great Britain, not Great Britain, not Great Britain. We call it Great Britain, but
Minor Britain.
It would be England.
Right.
England would have to actually build a fence,
Right.
a border fence, and it would have to have, I don't know, what would you call them? Border controls.
Gestapo.
Right? Border controls on the main roads, passport controls.
Peppers.
Coming in at papers, s'il vous plaît.
So here's my thought. It is not a question of fair versus unfair. It is a question of what the government decides. If you're going to have permeable borders, then you don't build a wall. If you're going to have, if you're going to lock people out, then you got to lock people out.
Right.
I'm not sure that there's a happy in between. And okay, going back a step, I am not sure.
All right, here's my question. What's wrong with having a wall or a border?
I'm not sure there's anything wrong with having a wall or a border. I think that it depends on what your country says it wants to do.
And it depends. And if a country, I think for one of Jeremy's further points is, if you decide you want to have a wall, he then doesn't want to have to pay for it. Well, if you want a fence between you and your neighbor, you pay for it.
You got to pay for the fence.
Well, walls generally don't work. Fences don't work.
That's a completely different
Even the
topic.
Great
They don't
Wall
work.
of China didn't quite work. Berlin Wall didn't
They
work.
did circle all of China with their wall.
And then, relatively small borders like North Korea, South Korea, it works. But they also have added demilitarized zone in the middle between the two fences. So, and it still barely works.
Oh, it's
with Mexico,
uncivilized to the extreme.
Yeah, with Mexico, it's not going to work because the Mexicans can build tunnels with air conditioning, subways inside, restaurants, Starbucks, whatever, they will laugh in our face.
They already are.
At this stupid wall, they're already going underground, and it's going to be completely ineffective and silly. And consider the length of that border.
Well,
that would be
Hadrian's Wall was between Scotland and England, right? It didn't work.
And
it's not effective. It's not going to work again. It's just,
And also,
it's crazy.
I'm
who
not
are you
sure
trying to
I'm not sure that's an argument that I would buy into, and I say that as a security guy. I don't put any security up with the idea that it's going to be impregnable. I put security up to keep the casual intruder out. So again, if your country or your leader decides that there's going to be a wall, then there's going to be a wall, whether or not it's the most feasible thing to do. That's, to me, that's just the way that it should work.
What's wrong with it?
I just said the opposite. I just said that if you want a wall, have a wall, but it should be something that you have the backing of your country on. And I don't think here in America that you would get the backing of the country, because we are founded on this idea of give me your tired, your poor, your so on, so on,
And
so on.
it's extremely unlikely that any wall we could build would actually do the job that it was intended to do.
Well, again, that's where you lose me. Just simply because there's
Because
nothing as an impenetrable
if you're saying that
defense.
they're saying just to keep out the casual, well, people who are determined to come into this country are not casual. It would keep people from vacationing in Mexico, or if you
Right.
build it between here and Canada. It would keep people from casually going over to Toronto for a ball game, but it would not keep somebody who was determined.
Yeah.
The actual
there's
math
nothing.
of it is that the net gain or loss is there are more people going back across the border, going south.
So we want to trap the Mexicans in.
That's apparently the idea. Yeah. He wants more free labor, is what Trump wants, yeah.
I just take the view that, we get all angst and worked up about some things. And I sometimes wonder, well, actually, why?
Well, you'll notice that the whole wall thing has sort of died a quiet death recently.
Yeah, he's not bringing it up anymore, and part of it could be that he realizes that if he builds that wall, he's going to prevent him from escaping when the mob of angry women chase him down to decapitate him.
No, I
So-
I honestly think it's simply that he hasn't got an attention span long enough to keep that idea in his mind.
It's a possibility.
Yeah.
There is. Let's moving on. Obviously, we've got an election, and in fact, tonight this recording is being made as we go into the final debate. So, watching American elections over the years since the 60s, as I'm old enough to be able to do, there comes a point at the end of the election where the loser says, "Okay, I'm done," and you hear on the TV, Mr. Ivanov has called Mr. Taylor and has wished him the best of luck,
Conceded,
sort of thing. Conceded.
Yeah.
And actually, a very rare event just happened then. Cash passed my nose in Conroy's, and it wasn't a deal. Anyway, carrying on. So I want to know what happens, and there is a lot of talk about this in the media right now, from the people who really get into this sort of thing, of what happens if Trump decides not to concede. Now, I'm not asking you about the technicalities of it, because the lawyers have got views on this. It isn't just up to the Electoral College, apparently.
Yeah.
Most people think it is, but apparently it isn't.
Yeah.
But what happens if he just chooses not to concede
Well-
and says the whole thing's rigged?
Well,
What are the implications for this, Evo?
Well, he can refuse to concede all he wants, but if I remember when Joe Frazier got knocked out by Muhammad Ali, he didn't have the option of saying, "Wait, I don't concede. I didn't lose." No, you lost fair and square. So whether he concedes or not, he's lost the election. So it's over.
If they have,
I'm
if they
taking
keep
a
suing people and
slightly
suing
different
people,
tack to the question.
I should think
You're
it would
talking
go to
about
the
his
Supreme
supporters.
Court.
Is
And
that what
they
you
would
mean?
just say,
What
cut it
I'm
out.
saying is,
Counting's over.
you have, regardless of how wealthy he is, the fact of the matter he has unlimited resources when it comes to lawyer.
Right.
Whether he's a multi-billionaire, multi-millionaire, or a gazillionaire, he still has unlimited resources towards lawyers.
Yeah.
If he brings in lawyers who say, "We're going to fight this," what happens?
Well,
Lewis.
I think he will. I think from the Trump perspective, he'd be able to fight it for as long as he wants. I don't think that that's really a important question, though. I think more important is, what does it do to the political process? Does it have any lasting repercussions on how people view their input into this whole thing? You've got this very, very loyal, dedicated group of people that follow Trump. And he's currently stirring them up to say, when this doesn't work in our favor, we have to do something. Don't know what that is. Don't know if that means forming their own party. Don't know if that means driving down the street, firing their guns. We have quite literally no idea what Trump is fomenting the crowd to
Oh, we
do.
have some idea. He wants them to go assassinate Hillary Clinton.
Well, yes,
He's made that very clear.
I would agree with that.
Jane, you joined us. What do you think?
Well, the other end of that is I don't think that Trump quite understands exactly what he is stirring up. I think it's not going to hit him until something actually happens. I mean, now, don't get me wrong. I agree with what Kath is saying. I think that it is, he's actually even mentioned or hinted at that kind of thing about Hillary Clinton. But I think that these supporters that Lewis was talking about are the type that people totally underestimate them on a level just because that's not how rational people think. And so
One lady was saying we're all Second Amendment here.
Yeah, but you say it wouldn't hit him until blank, blank, blank. I don't think it will ever hit him. He hasn't got the capability.
See, I disagree. I think it was his plan from the beginning that he tapped into the fact that there's this feeling of frustration on the right, and he has ridden that into an election for the highest office in the land. And I don't want to think that that was an accident.
Do you think that possibly he's actually working actively with Putin to destabilize the U.S. elections and make the whole system so that he becomes one of Putin's oligarchs and his territory is the U.S.?
I'm going to be completely conjectural because I have no fucking clue one way or the other. But I think that if the opportunity presented itself to a person like Trump, that he could have access to resources that he didn't otherwise have, whether they be from Putin or from Satan himself, Trump's notion is that I'm the smartest guy in the room. I'm going to take his money and stab him in the back later on. So, to my way of thinking, it has never been a question of I want to hurt the American people. I want to, I want to take the country apart. I think that there's just a ton of hubris and a ton of unexplainable pride.
let me throw in another sentence, and then I get Evo to respond. There are how many Republican voters? How many Republicans are going to vote in this next election? Roughly?
Fewer than there were in the last.
Roughly how many?
2.
Roughly how many?
I honestly have no idea. I couldn't even begin to guess.
Do you
100
call
100
Trump
million?
supporters Republicans?
I don't know. I mean, there's 300 million people in the United States. How many of them are in voting age?
Well,
How
and
many
only
of them
65%
don't ever vote?
of the voting.
All right. So here's the thing then. Let's say 20 million.
Sure.
Right, just to take a figure.
Sure.
This means that Trump TV are going to have, on day one, 20 million viewers.
You have a
Maybe
good
that's the
point
whole
there.
design. That's
Yeah.
a good point, because it's becoming very, very obvious that the man is just interested in causing trouble and being the center of attention and doing things for the first time in history. So I
Sorta
wouldn't be
like
surprised.
Jeremy.
So I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't concede, just because that would be the first time ever that a president just says, "No, I'm not going to concede." And I think he might do it just to continue to be in the limelight.
Do you think he actually is smart enough to have looked at Fox News, realized that here was a sort of vehicle that wasn't being used to its fullest extent, and realized that he could make a rabble-rousing power grab using a TV channel like Fox News, but without any of the previously unseen restraint?
The one thing I will say about Trump is that he is a manipulator. That's
yeah.
the one thing that is consistent through his life, whether you're talking about the women that he's married, you're talking about the businessmen that he's swindled. The one thing that he has demonstrated that he has the propensity to do is manipulate. So the notion that he has found the perfect tool to manipulate people in The Apprentice, which he then morphed into his political career, for me doesn't feel like a stretch.
I'd like to throw another little thing in to add to the mix. Right, we've got the butter and the salt and the flour and everything. Let's add another one in. Did you know, as Michael Caine would say, not a lot of people know this,
Great day in the morning.
that a sitting president has the power to delay an election in special circumstances. He also has the power to delay the handover in certain circumstances.
So Trump could get in, you're saying, and then refuse to have another election.
Correct. And then you could have President Putin Trump. This is why we have Her Majesty the Queen and James Bond.
Would the two of them come over as a pair?
No, she would just tell James to
Who
deal
would ride
with...
the other piggyback? I'm just curious.
But back to what Lewis was saying. Sorry, I was just
go
going to
ahead.
say back to what Lewis was saying, that he's a brilliant manipulator. I started thinking about this the other day just because, you start elementarily breaking it down in logical steps, and you think to yourself, why are Putin and Trump so scary? And then you see one side and you see the other. Trump reminds me, once again, I'm probably sure I've already said this, of a high schooler who just is manipulated in a situation to get what he wants, but he really doesn't understand nor care about the consequences until they're sitting right in front of him.
Yeah.
Putin, on the other hand, is the exact opposite of why he is so dangerous.
Yeah.
He's dangerous because he's hella smart.
Yeah.
And if he wants a relationship with Trump, and I'm sure everybody already knows this too, if he wants a relationship with Trump, it's so he can be his puppet and guide him, do whatever he wants to. He does not have any real use for friendship with this guy, and I mean that's pretty obvious, of course. But
He sees
Trump
him
is
as
a child.
useful
He's a
idiot
child.
is the phrase that they've used, and that's true.
Trump is not a brilliant manipulator. Trump is a primitive manipulator. If he was
Yes.
brilliant,
Yes.
if he was brilliant, he would play the game much smarter and be more refined and actually be in a position to win the election.
He's an instant gratification manipulator.
Yes. Instead, he does things that are reactive and immediate gratification. And every time he opens his mouth, he hurts himself to a point where 3 weeks before the election, you can run. He can run against a deep fried toenail and he'll still lose. It's he has hurt himself so much with every imaginable population except for his base that he's basically unelectable. You can't win without the women's vote. You can't win without minority vote. Latino vote.
If you take their vote away from them.
Well, yeah, but
Have you heard about this?
he could have
tweet,
so
repeal the
easily
19th?
manipulated the situation
What?
in his
No.
advantage.
Tell me about this tweet.
There's a tweet going around. Trump supporters repeal the 19th.
Yeah, because because they calculated that if women didn't vote, he would win easily. So believe it or not, and that's all. Yeah, that's
Right.
insane.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've reached this point of the idiocracy that we live in. That I traveled last week in rural Missouri, and it was Trump all the way. Everybody, giant signs, billboards, Trump pants everywhere. So people in rural areas are obsessed with it. He simplifies the message for them, or maybe he doesn't simplify. That's probably just how his messages are.
I was really
Yeah.
going to say he
Yeah.
doesn't simplify the message.
He doesn't. Yeah,
He's just
it is
simple.
what it is. Yeah. So, but it resonates in certain people that it's very direct and easily digestible. His policies that he doesn't really have policies, but he's got weird messages.
He's got sentiments. He's
yeah.
got nostalgia. Yes, that's exactly what I need to see. Donald Trump as
This, I think,
As what?
is coming
What
to
have
the
you
end, towards the end of our
Jeremy's
show
handing
today.
around a picture.
Is a picture. This is actually the scary thing. I had to give a lecture the other day, James Bond lecture, and some wag sent me a picture of Goldfinger and Trump.
From the original movie. Goldfinger
from
was a
the
very
original-
orange,
And
blonde-haired
believe
guy.
it or not, there is a picture out there on the internet of Goldfinger as Trump, or Trump as Goldfinger.
And it
couldn't
looks
tell that they
The
were
scary thing is that people were coming up to me after the lecture and saying, "We watched the whole of the Goldfinger movie thinking it was Mr. Trump."
Wow.
Dr. Orlando, let's have a word with you.
After a 3-week absence, we finally have the return of the word. The word this week, obombulate.
I want to hear the meaning
Well, this
of it.
clearly is the president.
Does
Yeah, let's
obombulate,
just
This is
see.
the
Let's
president
just see.
moving, isn't it?
does obombulate mean to win an argument with poise, to walk about, or to say you're the member of one political party, but then push the policies of another political party?
I really hope it's number one. I really hope it's number one.
I like the idea of number 3. This would support my ancient mother.
Obambulate, isn't that
I don't believe
women
it's a
who
real word.
ovulate just at the side of Obama? No, I'll say 2, to walk about.
Well, so we have a 2, we have a 3.
No.
The audience.
I hope it's number one.
3
I say
yeah.
number one, just because I want it to be.
It's 1.
The answer is number 2, to walk about.
To walk about.
Anybody
Thank
else?
you.
That's ambulate, not obombulate.
It is obombulate.
All right.
Okay, you've been listening
Oh,
to
my.
Wednesday Night Undressed. We need to go off and get dressed so that we can get on with the rest of our lives. I'd like to thank our producer today, Eric, strangely known as Eric the Producer. And
sometimes Eric the Terrible.
And Eric Rasmussen. Oh, now he's paying attention again.
Neil
Our
Rasmussen.
Our
Neil.
engineer, Neil. We call everybody. Churchill used to call all his servants and dogs the same name.
That's not insulting at all.
One's not allowed to do that sort of thing. Yeah. We and this is why you wanted to leave. And I'd like to thank the panel, those that turned up today.
I'm sorry I was late.
Yes, Jane was late. Ivo had to fly from Bulgaria. He has an excuse, and he uses his own wings.
I had team dinner. Soccer
Ate your team?
Soccer season is at the very end, so it's every day is extremely busy. So
It's
Yeah.
the end.
one more week.
Anyway, you've been listening to a shortened version of Wednesday Night Undressed.
Yay.